Hello, my loves. Hello, hello, hello. My name is Destina. This is Spiritually Bougie Astrology, and we're going to be looking at the astrological transits from May 22nd to May 29th. I haven't got to say this in a really long time, but it looks like it's going to be a good week, babes. I'm so serious. It looks like for a lot of us, it's going to be a really good week. It feels really good. At the time that I'm recording this, it's Saturday morning, so it is, I do this all the time. Saturday, May the 20th, and it's just after 12 p.m. I don't know about you guys, but see, yesterday was the new moon. Right after the new moon perfected, the moon went into Gemini, and literally between the moon's trine to Pluto and the moon's square to Saturn. So the trine to Pluto happened around, 1 o'clock in the afternoon Central Time. But that square to Saturn did not take place until after 3 something in the morning. I got a lot of downloads. I got so many downloads. I am a Scorpio rising. Gemini is my 8th house. It is very much a psychic house for people that actually, are trying to learn more about astrology and understand more aspects. Anytime that you have the moon go through your 4th, 8th, and 12th house, you can get a lot of energetic downloads. You can get a lot of insight, epiphanies, sudden ideas, depending on what the 8th house rules for you. But the 4th house is because of ancestral ties. The 8th house is because of the underworld ties, the Hades energy. Like we go to the underworld to bring people back, spirits come back. And then the 12th house is karma. It's the unknown, the unseen. It is ending. So when the moon goes through certain placements, it can really activate a lot of psychic energy. Now, to be clear, the majority of my downloads were personal. However, if anyone else went through that last night, I want them to hear this from me is completely normal. If you had that moment last night where you just could not mentally shut down, you couldn't get something off your mind, you couldn't get a situation off of your mind. For some people, this isn't your 8th house. This wasn't a psychic house, but some people, this was more like 7th house, or it was 5th house, or it was 10th house. It was some other area where we just couldn't shut it down, couldn't shut down our mind. We were overthinking. We were trying to figure some things out and trying to get some new clarity. And the thing is for some of us, we're getting the clarity, but we're not getting full clarity yet. And we're not going to get full clarity until after Mercury leaves its shadow. And that doesn't even happen this week. It's actually going to happen next week, right around Memorial Day. I think it's one day after, right around there. So just be aware of that. If you guys have still felt like you're kind of spinning in place mentally and you haven't gotten, all your ducks back in a row, you haven't got everything figured out again, you haven't been able to get everything going. The other good thing that's going on today, the day that I'm recording this, is Mars is going into Leo. Mars is in Leo. Mars is in Leo. This is going to be good for a lot of people, especially because while the majority of the time frame that Mars is going to be in Leo, the sun is going to be in Gemini, and the sun does really well there. The sun, of course, rules Leo, so he's the host of Mars. So we're going to have a very empowered Mars energy going through the sign of Leo. And that's going to be good for a lot of people for the most part. For the most part. So just be aware of that. You're going to start to feel your energy pick up these next few days. You're going to feel like you're able to finally move again. We're not going to feel so weighted in our emotions, whether it's the deep-seated emotions or those topical level emotions that have recently been shaken up over the last 6 weeks. Mars was in Cancer for 6 weeks, but it's not just it's not just the Mars in Cancer. Actually, it was longer. It's more like 7 weeks. Mars went into Cancer. Was it 8 weeks? Oh man. I think it was longer than 6 weeks this time. But that would make sense because he's still getting speed after that retrograde. Anyways, it was long. Mars in Cancer almost felt like Mars in Gemini, but on an emotional turmoil level. It's been crazy. I'm just glad to have things straighting back out again. I want my energy level back. I was actually doing a lot of things right before Mars went into Cancer, and it's just like, okay, slow and steady. We're not getting anywhere very fast because Mars doesn't do well here. And it's the truth. Mars doesn't do well in the sign of Cancer. So the weekend going into May 22nd, the weekend going into this new energy, we just had a new moon. We are going through the moon going in Gemini, and Mercury is just starting to make steps forward. And I want to remind everybody is that these first the days going right into Monday, going right into the 22nd, is the last few days of like Mercury in a sextile to Saturn. So there's supposed to be a good amount of like new experience, new insight, new communication. There has been an area over the last month or so where we weren't clear on a person or an idea or a job or a direction, that now, after we've had that moment to pump the brakes, pump the brakes, reframe, rethink, relook, re the way that we did. Now, the new, the refocused energy, where we're putting that energy now, whether this is a whole new person, a whole new job, a whole new topic, a whole new car, a whole new whatever it is for you, wherever we're putting that focus now, we're having very serious connection, having very serious communication because of Saturn's sextile to Mercury. So there's very serious insight that comes from the weekend before, knowledge, communication, very specific things that kind of roll us into Monday. So, that being said, let's look at Monday. I like Monday. Monday look good. All right, babes. Right now I have it at Monday, May the 22nd. This is at 4 a.m. Central Time. There's no rhyme or reason to why it's there. It's more along the lines of we will wrap up the I keep wanting to say Mars and Gemini because we all dealt with it for so long, but me always saying it for so long, like I just default Mars and Gemini. Like I'm gonna be scarred forever from Mars as retrograde in Gemini. I'm so sorry. Now, after the weekend, there's some very interesting conversations. There's very interesting communication. There was very interesting insight that has been presented to people. Saturn with that sextile to Mercury. And there's going to be one more element that ties into that on Monday. Now, that's not the only transit going on Monday, but it's the one I'm going to start with because the other one goes from Monday to Tuesday. So we'll do it last. So, bumping this by hour. I'm going to get this down to roughly, yeah, right around here. I have it at 1:03 p.m. Central Time. The moon is now at 7 degrees. It's leaving a trine from Saturn, but entering a sextile from Mercury. Mercury and Saturn are just starting to separate still. But they're, for all of last week, like Mercury was at 6 degrees. Once we get into the new week, Mercury's finally making forward steps, forward motion, but he's in his shadow period. He's going over areas of the sky that he's already been at twice before. The first time had one idea, the second time had a whole new perspective, and now we're taking the lessons from the old idea, the info that we're getting with the new perspective, and we're putting them together. Remember the weaving thing? The basket, the weaving, new information, new insight, framing it in and weaving it into old insight, old ideas, and old ways of doing things. The moon is tying up one last inkling with this energy. One last topic of discussion. But now that Mercury is direct, whatever this is all about forward momentum. Now, the other thing I want to say right now about Saturn is the fact that Saturn is slowing down, and in the next month, Saturn is going to turn retrograde. So whenever it comes to time or karma or authority or legal matters. We're getting to a stalemate in the energy where things are going to feel like they're not progressing and not going anywhere and not doing anything when Saturn is just sitting and spinning. That's basically kind of the energy that we're starting to go into. He will not get much further. I think it's like 7 degrees and 14 minutes. And right now it's at 6 degrees and 39. So we are less than a degree away from the retrograde point. But that also means whenever Saturn is getting closer to that retrograde point, Saturn is slowing down, and we're going to feel like time is not on our side in certain areas. And this again is where I come back to part of the recent shifts and part of the energy of things coming into new placement and coming into new areas of life was because we needed support to get something done. We haven't had the time to do it on our own. And for us, we're going to have to incorporate support to get these things done. Just so everybody's aware, like it's going to require additional insight and it will require additional information. From this moment forward, I really want to put this in perspective for everybody. There is a slowdown with Saturn. And by the end of this week, we'll have the sun squaring that Saturn. So there is parts of Monday that are building towards something, just so everybody is aware. Okay. It all comes down to the moon right here. This is the point where when Mercury went into shadow at the start of its retrograde, Saturn was in this trine sextile spot. At the end of the Mercury retrograde, right before Mercury turned direct, Venus was in this spot, in this trine sextile spot. But Mercury was going backwards. Mercury was not moving forward, so Mercury didn't have full progression yet. There was communication, there were seeds planted, but we didn't have the full progression. We're getting closer to some progression. We're getting closer to something coming to the surface, something being spoken about, and something being understood. Now, we need Saturn, long-term karma, emotional things that need to be talked about. This communication is very, very grounded. The sun is now in Gemini, so the sun is now in Mercury's sign, and Mars is in the sun sign. This is empowering communication. This is empowering conversation. This is very necessary conversation tied into how the next month is going to go through Gemini season. It's my season, baby. Sorry. I like Gemini season, but I am a Gemini, so it's fun for me. Okay. Moving this along. Where did we have? There's going to be connections in regards to like passion projects. There's going to be new pivotal connections or reconnections because we still, with the shadow energy, we still got that reconnection energy going on. For some people, now that Mars is in Leo, we are getting confirmation of something to hit the ground running, to just handle business, to get something accomplished. So again, where we've had certain reservations that we couldn't break through, we're getting past those reservations and starting to have a little bit more of a breakthrough in the days ahead. There's a lot of communication that needs to happen. There's a lot of like mental exception, like accepting things that needs to occur, and expression of emotional maturity. Hear me out on that. For some people, they don't do well with expressing their emotions. They don't do well with talking about how they feel. They don't do well with talking about past experiences. You know plenty of people in your life that whenever you try to talk about like a problem, they clam up and like, I don't talk about that. I don't know. And they just bull up and, try to ignore the area that needs to be discussed, the area that needs to be overcome, the area that needs to be worked through. They try. This is one of those conversations where the people that stay bottled up most likely aren't going to be bottled up. They're going to be more forthright to talk about things. They're going to be more ready to communicate certain things. And more than likely, this is going to be because of that outside source, that other person that has come into the mix that has changed the dynamic from before. Now, I said there's one other transit to today that I want to talk about later in the evening part, not so much in the overnight. So let's kind of fast forward this to the evening when this is going to perfect. So this particular transit, this feeds from Monday. So some people are going to be feeling the buildup to an event, a change, a shift, a very pivotal, supported shift based off of recent communication. And that is because Jupiter and the square to Mars are going to perfect in the later hours of Monday going into Tuesday. So for some people, things are going to kind of happen on Monday night. For other people, it's going to be more Tuesday because of the way this perfects and just the human factor. So it actually perfects right after midnight my time. Here's Jupiter, 1 degree, 28 minutes. Here's Mars at 1 degree, 27 minutes. And this is just after midnight. And by 1 a.m., Mars has passed that ideal square. So we need to talk about some of the very interesting actions that are going to come. And considering we still have this Pluto energy to this square. So there's a T-square energy with Pluto. The sun is leaving a trine from Pluto, but is in a sextile to Mars. This also occurs on Monday going into Tuesday, while Jupiter's in here. So there is mercurial support in the energy. There's certain conversations, certain communication, and certain hopeful, pivotal actions whenever it comes to Mars and Jupiter. Jupiter's in the higher authority here. Jupiter is the one impressing the square onto Saturn. It's not Saturn. Mars. I don't know my planets today. I warned everybody, I haven't slept. I'm still drinking my coffee. It's been a lot. Jupiter's square to Mars is fuel. It is like fuel to the fire. Mars doesn't need help with fire now that he's in Leo. But it is support. It is hope. It is education, like the teaching of something, philosophy. There is something that is impressed upon Mars. For some of us, it's going to be money. For some of us, it's going to be a commitment. For some of us, it's going to be a turn of events that have a very much emotional tie to them. Because what other transit was going on Monday? Saturn, Mercury, Moon sextile. Now let's get into Tuesday and let's keep talking about those emotions when it comes to the pivotal change that's also at influx between Jupiter and Mars. So, in the early parts of the day, the moon is going to make this conjunction to Venus right as Venus is entering the square from Chiron. We need to fix something. We need to work through something. We need to heal something. Wellness check type energy whenever it comes to Chiron. But we're at the beginning points of fixing something because this square does not perfect on the 23rd. We get the first connection, the first inkling, the first heart-opening energy for this week. We feel it building. We feel that trajectory happening, but the true, actual emotional connection for a lot of people is going to be the next morning. It's going to be whenever the moon hits that conjunction to Venus. Now, one of the reasons I'm saying that is because look at what the last two Cancer transits have done with the moon. Because the moon went into Cancer twice while Mars was there. And each time we had very high points in chaotic turmoil like energy, emotional turmoil, the surface level disruptions and frustrations, like we talked about that Mars was scratching the surface, the reactive surface energy. Now Venus is kind of going through and she's fixing everything that Mars scorched. She's fixing this energy. She's putting care here. She's nurturing this wound. She's bandaging this area. And she's going through, and for lack of a better way to say, she's fixing, putting a band-aid on all the areas that Mars just scorched. Now, I'm saying scorched for a reason because it is Mars. Mars is always armed. Flamethrower can be a part of that arming. Let's just be honest. But now that Mars is in Leo, we really will feel the scorched earth energy. And we're going to feel that area of momentum where Mars is making way for Venus, because Venus is going to get closer and closer to Mars. They're never going to hit a conjunction while in Leo because Venus will turn retrograde. But there's going to be an entire month when it feels like Venus is just a few steps behind Mars and either putting the next layer on something, putting the next coat of paint, doing all the finish work for what Mars just prepared, or we're going to start to really see like how much somebody is fixing something for us, or how much we are having to fix something, how much we are having to deal with recent disruptions. And those energies are going to start to happen more and more, but you're going to kind of feel it more right here. This will be like that first deep level inkling where you really feel Venus is fixing something. Venus is going over something. Venus is trying to get certain things handled. And she's going to be doing that for part of this week. And part of the energy that is going to be getting fixed, getting healed, being overcome is going to be an area that was specifically ruffled up in eclipse season. So just be aware of that. Emotional connection, having something come together, having something delivered, having something finally, pan out in some way. I like this energy considering Venus was the host of the new moon that occurred, yesterday for me because of when I'm recording. But Friday the 19th, yeah, because today's the 20th, sorry. So this feels like we have a heart-opening energy, an emotional heart-opening energy, and many of you are going to be able to feel that area lining out because we've had the downloads and we've had that burst of clarity. We've had something come through that we didn't have before. Now we're able to make a correction, make a connection, and this is going to be one that kind of takes over part of the week. Given the way Jupiter and Mars are in their square during this time, hopeful lunges forward, hopeful, bountiful, prosperous steps forward. We're implying that this is different. We're implying that the support is different. We're implying that the message, the connection, the things that are starting, that this is going to be different, and it will truly allow for us to overcome an area of fear because Mars is still in that opposition to Pluto. Yes, they are separating. Their opposition was actually exact today, Saturday, on the 20th, when I'm recording this. It'll be exact today. But whenever it comes to where we're at in this energy, a lot of the pivotal actions forward and motion forward is going to have an emotional connection for a lot of us whenever it comes to this day. Venus and Chiron are in a square. Chiron is the one imposing the square onto Venus and the moon. So Chiron is saying, like, I want to fix something. We need to fix something. And Venus, being in this nurturing, luscious, Cancer, watery energy, goes, oh, baby, we gonna fix it. We gonna fix it. It's gonna be good. It's gonna be great. It's going to get fixed. I got you. Send me the supplies. Send me the medication. Send me whatever you're wanting to add to it. Just send it to me. I got you. Just send it over. The moon's the delivery boy. In some ways, the moon can literally represent delivery. Having something show up, having something appear, having somebody, having somebody show up, having some level of connection or, getting some kind of communication. There's some excitement that starts to build after this conjunction, but we also feel very righteous. Between the sun empowering Mars the way that it is and Jupiter empowering Mars the way that it is, there is a lot of support. There is a lot of gassing it up and feeding the fire and fueling a passion, fueling a change, fueling new trajectory, fueling re-trajectory for some people. It all really comes down to where it's at in your personal chart. Mars is going to do better in Leo for the majority of us compared to what Mars was doing in Cancer. Okay. As the day continues, because this connection happens real early in the morning, I have it at 9 a.m. Central Time, so roughly between 8 and 10 is whenever you can kind of feel this area come together. The moon will perfect its square to Chiron right afterwards. So again, we're applying a bandage, we're getting something fixed, we're getting something worked through. And then it's also going to hit this sextile to Uranus. So for some people, this is going to be surprising. Whether it's you getting surprised by somebody sending you flowers, delivery, or you getting a magic box from Amazon, you have no clue where it's like, I know I did not order that. Where did this come from? Is that the right address? Did they deliver it to the right place? You question things. But Uranus's energy in this can also mean that other people are surprised by what comes together, by what connection is being made. Some people, the connection that's happening is going to happen through digital means, Uranus. This is going to be online connection, DM type energy. Getting on those Zoom conference calls and doing that level of networking and talking to people in other markets. Like, it's going to be that level of excitement, or it's going to be like two people made a decision to get back together, and then all of a sudden we're going to post that Facebook status. So-and-so is in a relationship, and you're like, where did that come from? I thought y'all weren't even talking to each other. Where did that come from? That's this type of energy. This thing that comes together, it overcomes an area that needs to be healed. It feels the new levels of support that needed to come through, and we feel empowered in the energy, emotionally empowered, mentally empowered, physically empowered. Mars is in Leo, physically empowered. We have the ability to take steps forward. Jupiter's in a really good place, Venus is in a good place, and Mars is in a good place. They're all in very good places. We have the ability to take the supported steps forward after the connections are made, or the reconnections, or the final connections, the final loops in the belt. We have the ability to make forward motion and make forward momentum. Now, I'm not going to lie, Mars is a cutoff energy. I've said this to people before. Mars is a cutoff energy. So there will still be some action that is like trimming the fat. It's getting something handled, getting something overcome, whether it's fear, whether it's a transformation. There is still overcoming, even in the new connection, even in the new energy. We still have hurdle, bars. Like we're trying to get over stuff. We're trying to get through things. So there can be an obstacle course energy inside of us as we're feeling empowered, and we're starting to get very consumed by hope. I've actually said this back in that month ahead forecast. I'm going to say it again this week. Jupiter is going to get real close to that north node. It doesn't go exact this week. It's going to go exact in June. But we start to feel that consumed by hope, consumed by the idea of wealth, consumed by a certain energy, having something come that we desire. And if you have natal placements in this first few degrees of Taurus, first few degrees of Scorpio, first few degrees of Aquarius or Leo, you're really feeling this energy. You're really feeling things slide into place. You're really going to be feeling just how powerful this grand cross energy is, because it is a grand cross. We have Mars, we have the South Node, we have Pluto, we have Jupiter and the North Node, and Mercury is like the top of this cross is just a whole mess. And the top of this cross is being ruled by Venus, and Venus is getting something that she wants with this conjunction to the moon in Cancer. She's getting something that she emotionally wants. She's getting validation. She's seeing something come together. She's helping something come together. That's what this energy is. All right. So I'm bumping this by hour. After the main parts of those connections are made, like everything's just kind of riding from what has just occurred. Like there's not a lot of heavy transits. There's not a lot of crazy transits. It's really riding the existing energy. The Jupiter Mars energy, we're going to feel it all week. We were feeling it on Monday. It went exact Monday into Tuesday. We were feeling it build up from the weekend going into Monday and Tuesday. Now we will still be feeling the energy, but we're kind of riding the wave of the after effect after these two perfect. So for the majority of us, we're going to feel that empowerment, that new position, that new bit of stamina, that new uplift, enlightenment, lesson, the new funding, so to speak. We're going to feel that all week. The remnants of it, the thing that comes through, the thing that happens, it's not a one-day thing. It's going to have a lingering effect. We will be dealing with it all week. Okay. Oh, now in the overnight hours from the 23rd into the 24th, the moon is going to hit this sextile from Neptune. I would be curious of what was going on right before Mars went into Leo. So Mars went into Leo again on the 20th, on the day I'm recording this on Saturday. But there was something going on after Mercury turned direct last Sunday. And then all week we had, because we had the moon conjoin Neptune, Mercury turned direct, but Neptune and Mars were entering a trine. Now the moon is going to come all the way around, and whatever seed was planted, whatever we realized, whatever thing that we were talking about late Sunday night at the end of that Mercury retrograde, something from that is going to come back up right around here because of the Neptune moon trine. It's not just because of that, but it's also going into a whole different type of energy where we feel something come through, so we can get a lot of inspiration. If we are asleep, many of us are asleep at 3 something in the morning, we can have like very vivid dreams, but it's like we're going to get the next wave of energy tied to something that came together, the idea, the seed that was planted right as Mercury turned direct. There was conversations, there was an inkling of something, and now that's going to be coming a little bit more full force when the moon hits this area where Mars was at the time, and then later in the day hits this conjunction to Mars. That's why I'm bringing this part up. Mars just changed signs, but Mars was in that trine to Neptune all last week, didn't end until he changed signs. And then what did Mars do? He went from a trine to Neptune to a square to Jupiter. We went from illusion, delusion, not being clear, fogginess, some deceptive, sneaky kind of energy, where, not being straight forward and direct. And then Mars went into Leo and we went to straight forward and direct. Like, no bullshit. Jupiter is far more tangible than Neptune, especially right now. We went from an area that was kind of cloudy, kind of unclear, kind of going a weird way, to not so weird. Very, very solid, very, very clear, very, very purposeful. And on this day, there is something that ties back to the end of that Mercury retrograde, whenever Neptune was starting its trine to Mars. So we're at 3 a.m. The moon will actually trine Mars exactly between 4 and 5 a.m. Central Time. Like, it's right here. This is right after 4 a.m. And then just a few hours later, the moon is going to go into Leo. And we love the moon in Leo energy. And it's going to hit this conjunction to Mars. Now, before it actually hits this, some of us might wake up the morning of the 24th, so Wednesday morning, confused, not completely clear. You know how sometimes you sleep so hard, you wake up, you're like, did I even sleep at all? Like, no, because you were so busy in the cosmos, you woke up exhausted. Like, your spirit didn't sleep, your body slept. So then whenever your spirit came back, you're like, oh my God, I'm still so tired. Yeah. We're going to have a bit of that whenever we first wake up. We're going to feel a little bit of that lethargy. It's going to take a little bit more coffee and a little bit more to get our steps together. Some of us might be a little confused or dazed and just kind of be looking around going, did I have something to do today? What's on my calendar? Do I have appointments? Is there a doctor's appointment? Is there, like, it's going to take a little bit to really get your bearings straight. There is going to be something that is unexpected to this morning for a lot of people, not everybody, but for a lot of people. There's going to be like ditzy confusion is what I'm hearing right now. Ditzy confusion. Like, you go to pour coffee in your coffee cup, but you don't pour it in the coffee cup. You pour it in the sugar container because you're that mentally drained. This is that day. Where are my keys? Why do we need keys? I have a key ring? Like, I would be this person. Like, I have a key ring with keys all hanging on there. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, this would be that day that I look at my key ring going, I think those are my car keys. Are those really my car keys? Did something move? Did something change? Like, it's going to be that weird, not full connectivity. It's not going to hit all the cylinders. There will be something that kind of comes through again from that day before, but I feel like you'll really know what that is by the time the moon hits that conjunction to Mars. That area where we have been cloudy, where we have been confused, that we were trying to break out of during that new moon. This kind of feels like the breakout. So the moon goes into Leo about 9:30 in the morning. It's going to hit that opposition to Pluto. And at this moment, this is 10:03 a.m. Central Time. The moon opposition to Pluto, it's exact. It is exact. Afterwards, it's going to hit a square from Jupiter before it hits a conjunction to Mars. Fixed sign placements: Leo rising, Taurus rising, Scorpio rising, Aquarius rising. Y'all gonna be busy dealing with something. Aries rising, Libra rising, something with kids, loved ones, something along these lines. But there's a lot of busyness to Wednesday. There's going to be some over romanticized stuff. There's going to be some dramatic stuff. I'm getting all of that. The thing is, the stuff I'm picking up right now, it's not even in my notes because I wrote my notes yesterday, and all the downloads that I had last night are really impacting the way that I'm doing this. So I did have dream messages written down, but whenever it came to that moon trine to Neptune, I literally just picked that up this morning. So, or afternoon. It is afternoon now. Something from the week between Mercury ending its retrograde and the new moon comes to light, comes to a more tangible, solid surface or a tangible, solid point. Um, be very aware if you've been having any issues in regards to like head health, like migraines, if whenever because Mars was in a trine to Neptune and then hits that square to Jupiter. Be aware of migraine issues. Not a great day to go do Botox. I'm gonna like, let's not do Botox this day. um, God, there's something else here that I'm not fully picking up. Paying somebody, depositing funds. Like, yeah, I totally want you to do the work on my house. So here's your deposit. Here's your promissory check. Here's something like that. If we just made the promise, we just signed the contract a few days before, then this is the action starting to take place. It really comes down to what was going on in those few days. If it was about a person, then this is having that disruptive conversation. This is having something disruptive in the energy that is, again, tied to the support, tied to the sun in Gemini, so tied to the things that are coming through, tied to the things that have happened since the new moon, and everything is meant to overcome an area of fear or to complete a transformation or take back personal power, these areas of life. Okay. Physical disruption. There can be physical disruption. Don't trip. Like trip and fall. Like watch your feet. I'm not kidding. Watch your feet. All right. So we're going to bump this. I'm just by hour to get to the next morning, going into the 25th, Thursday, the 25th. Thursday and Friday are good. Like there's not a whole lot of heaviness. So I've got this roughly 6 a.m. now. The moon is going to square Mercury. So there's going to be some type of decision, some type of conversation, some type of insight that is provided to recent events, some type of additional layer, outside input, a new part of the experience, a new verdict, a new lab result, test result, something along these lines. It's not heavy, but it's new communication that kind of enlightens, because the moon is in Leo, that enlightens us. It's solid communication. It's necessary communication. So again, lab panel, that's something small. Getting the right documents, getting documents in, the documents that you've been waiting for, getting something brought to you paperwork wise, having things appear, or getting the verbal confirmation that documents are going to come, and then documents might come later in the day. And the later in the day would be more whenever we get to this square to Uranus. Okay. I like this square to Uranus, by the way. So I'm going to bump this all the way forward to this energy. To this point in the sky. Now, this is going to perfect in the evening, but we're going to kind of build to it throughout the day. But there's something very promising. So Venus has just left its square to Chiron, so it's still separating. Chiron is going to trine the moon. Uranus is going to square the moon and sextile Venus. So we have healer, square, healer, trine, anarchy, reform, excitement, Uranus, sextile, and square. So there's going to be something that is meant to heal a situation, fix a problem, overcome an issue, satisfy demands, going off of like, if it's like banking or lending, here's the paperwork, here's the contract, here's what you needed. So satisfying demands. And if it's that satisfying demands, if it's paperwork, then it's like probably electronically sent. That would be the Uranus energy here. But with the Venusian tie to it, like there's a blessing. There's a Band-Aid fix. We're getting something going. Now, I'm going to remind everybody, whenever before the Mercury Cazimi and before the full moon eclipse that occurred back in earlier parts of May, there was a sextile between Uranus and Mars. But this occurred like right before Uranus left shadow, so we were still kind of dealing with old energy and old disruptions that needed to get broken through. And literally, it was the Virgo moon weekend a month ago. So that last few days of April going into May that I'm referring to. There was something that came through at that time that, again, kind of fed into that pumping of the brakes. You saw something differently. You seen a situation differently. You realized something didn't make sense. You realized something wasn't quite right. This isn't like that. This is meant to progress. This is meant to carry forward. There's understanding just as much as there are people at odds. So that means it's people in two different areas, two different directions, two different ideas. That's what a square is. But there's understanding with the sextiles and the trines. There is support with the sextiles and the trine. There is some type of energy in the sense of like, we want to satisfy the situation. We want to overcome something. We want to get something dealt with. We want to have that new or renewed emotional support. We want to fix the situation. We want to complete the necessary tasks because we want the house. We want that connection. We want that trip. We want that partnership. We want that marriage. We want that job position. We want what we want. Now that all comes down to where it's at in your own personal charts. But we are taking steps to satisfy the thing that we want in this energy. Going from Thursday into Friday. So some people are going to be making, like I said, you're going to be sending your documents at midnight. Here's all my bank statements. If you're sending bank statements in, my lender friends will love me for telling you this. Do not black out everything on your bank statements. Okay? Okay, don't do that. Because they're going to make you resend it, and that's going to irritate you just as much as it's irritating them to have to tell you that. Don't black out everything. The bank needs to know what you're doing with the banks. Real estate 101. Don't black out all your documents when you're sending them to official people. Sending those documents late at night. Sending that confirmation. Sending that final step. Having the reaction. Remember what I was saying earlier? There was going to be some part with some people with the Uranus energy, like where we're connecting something's going to happen, and then you're going to see their Facebook status. You're going to see that sudden, like, you were not even talking to anybody 3 days ago. Well, not to your knowledge. You Scorpio placements, you're not telling everybody. Capricorn placements, you ain't telling everybody. And all of a sudden, there's that Facebook status, and you're getting that onslaught of support. I'm like, I'm so happy for you guys. That's so great. Congratulations. Oh, you graduated. Congratulations. Oh, you got engaged. Congratulations. Whatever got announced, this is also kind of feeding into the support of that and having more people see the change, having more parts of the change communicated, having parts of the change really being realized and noticed and worked through. There's a public, because we are talking about Leo transits, there's a public aspect, there's a exciting aspect, but when we have the sun going through Gemini, there's a very spoken aspect. So there will be some surprises. There will be some things that are very unexpected to others when you're going through your personal stuff. There's going to be other people going through their personal stuff that you're going to be surprised when you see the Facebook status. When you see the suddenness, when you see that somebody's on a vacation, they're like, I talked to you yesterday. You didn't say crap. I was like, I got bored. It's Gemini season, baby. That can happen. I got bored. I just jumped up and decided to go. All right. This transit, again, this happens in the overnight hours. So for some people, it's going to be late Thursday night. For other people, it's going to be a big part of Friday. Again, satisfying those needs, satisfying certain wants. Now, there's another part of Friday, and I'm going to bump I'm not going to bump it. I don't need to bump it. There's another part of Friday that I want to bring up. It's not exact at this time, but it needs to be stated, and that is Mars is squaring the nodes. Here's the north node, 3 degrees, 33 minutes. Here's the south node, 3 degrees, 33 minutes. Right now, Mars is at 3 degrees and 11 minutes. We'll leave him alone. Mars squaring the nodes. In my meditation and in the way that I have seen things transit-wise play out for a lot of people is when a planet squares the nodes, the dynamic with that planet tends to change. Now, we haven't had a whole lot of squaring the nodes since I've started this podcast. So for a lot of people, this is going to be very new information. But it's something that I've noticed for a really long time, is that when a planet squares the nodes, that the dynamic of how that planet is moving forward from then on is going to be more aimed towards the node that it's going towards. Now, in this case, we have a very forward, direct, full steam ahead, full motion Mars squaring the nodes and now moving towards the south node. And the south node tends to be more Martian in a lot of its ways. Tactical, necessary, will cut you off. It's the body without a head. Its cutoff game is real because its whole existence is the cutoff game. The dynamic of Mars is going to change for the first time since August of last year. In the very first week of August of 2022, there was a nice big triple conjunction of Uranus and Mars and the North Node, and so many things have just been suddenly disrupted in so many ways since then. We needed those disruptions. They were necessary. We all had gains from those disruptions. Moving forward, Mars's energy, slowly as it approaches the South Node, is going to change from gains to release, to letting things go, to resolving, dissolving this type of energy. Not everybody is going to expect that. Not everybody's even going to know how to handle that. But it is an energy that we're going to start to feel in our actions. We're going to see that we're going from an area where we're trying to hold on to something and trying to keep a good tight grasp on it. And after this weekend, after specifically on the 26th, but I'm just going to say this whole weekend, you're going to start to see the need to release and let go. Some of those releases are going to be tied to passion. Some of those releases are going to be tied to ambitions, not because you're losing your ambition, but because your ambition is changing. Your drive, your momentum, your direction is changing. It is changing based off the new supports that have come through. That means we have to alter the idea. We have to trim the fat. In some ways, it's not fat. Sometimes we're just taking one big piece. Sometimes we don't need a steak that's the size of Texas. You Texas people can get salty if you want to. We don't need a steak the size of Texas. Sometimes it needs to just be cut down. And we can take that Texas-sized steak and we can turn it into a week's worth of steak dinners. That's what I mean by cutting stuff down. It's not always about cut off. It's not always about elimination. It's more along the lines of fitting and shaping and putting things now in their place. If we were square peg, round hole before, Mars is armed. Give me that square peg. I'll round it out for you. And you get an old hillbilly with a good knife, they can do that. Now, the one thing I will say about right after the moon leaves its square from Uranus, the moon is going to go void, which is going to make Friday feel kind of weird because we haven't had like a void of course Friday in a while. Now, some of us are going to get to the point that we want to, again, do something out of the box and do something a little exciting and kind of break free and let our hair down. Do that. This day, though, doesn't feel like what we dealt with the last two times that we've had, hits to Uranus where we're like trying to break away from people. This doesn't feel like I need to go hop in the Jeep and run away for the weekend. This feels a lot different. We're happy about where we're at. There's excitement with where we're at. And again, we're feeling parts of our drive, parts of our passion, parts of our ambition. They're starting to shift. They're not going away. It's not a detrimental feeling, but they will start to shift from this point. All right. I am not going to bump this by hour because I don't really need to. I will tell everybody that the moon's going to be void for most of the day, and literally the moon will not change signs until 11 at night. So that's why I just bumped this by day. So now we're on the 27th, which is Saturday. First thing in the morning, it's 12:03 a.m. And there is going to be a different kind of shift. The energy going up to Friday feels like it's one set of topics and one set of energy. The energy once we get to Saturday, though, kind of feels like the game has changed. Are we still dealing with the Mars-Jupiter square? Yes. Are we still dealing with the new passion and the new support and everything? Yes. However, we need to talk about some recent experiences and some recent events and things that have occurred during that Mercury retrograde. And if you watch the Mercury retrograde video, I brought this day up. I did. Now that Mercury retrograde video, that's almost 2 months old now, so you don't even have to go back and watch it for just this part, but I did do a video about this because of this energy here. This feels like tension, but it also kind of feels like explanation. It feels like getting two stories, getting two ideas, getting input from two different people, and we don't know where to go with it. Now, hear me out, because when I was first meditating on the transit for this day, one part of me was just like, I feel like a kid going between all the adults, not just mom and dad. And that's funny is next weekend, whenever this Sunday energy is going on, I'm going to be at powwow for my tribe. So I'm going to be at the Delaware powwow. And this is going to be the best example of how to explain this. If you've ever been at a powwow, if you've ever been in the tribal community, if you ever been in this area, it is truly the village. We still have the village mentality. If your kid's acting up, I'm going to bust his butt. If your kid's not doing something right, I'm going to say something. That's the village mentality. And when you're at powwow, you really feel this, because it doesn't matter what kid it is, your auntie, your uncle, your auntie, your uncle, your auntie. So I even last summer, my little brother, he's 3. There's obviously a huge age difference there. And he can't say my name very well, or at the time he couldn't. So he just kept hearing my nephews, who are just a little bit older than him, saying, auntie, 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 or tia, tia, tia. So he said it too. And our other brother, who's like right in the middle between me and him, he's like, no, 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 that's your sister. And the thing is, he was so cute. His name is Kyler. Kyler looked at my brother, or looked at our brother, and he was just like, I know, auntie, because it made sense to him. Everybody is auntie. Everybody is uncle. The moon in Virgo, making this opposition to Saturn and this square to the sun, the way that it is going to feel like the kid in the village. Everybody is your auntie. Everybody is your uncle. They don't care if they know your parent or not. If you're not doing what you're supposed to do, they're going to tell you don't do that. It is a village mentality whenever it comes to tribal families. So this kind of feels like that. This feels like, I want to do this. Mom said no. I'm going to go talk to dad. Dad said yes. Dad said go ask mom. And there can be some of this. There can be some frustration, because there can be one person that has their ego involved, because it is the sun. There can be a buildup of certain tensions that start to come through this time, because the moon is in the quarter moon area in this opposition to Saturn. So we're building up for some tension. We're building up towards the full moon that's going to happen a week from now. We're building towards something that hasn't occurred yet. And this has ties back to the Mercury retrograde. Of course it does, because why not? So let's go back to, I want to say it's May 1st, May 2nd, May 1st, May 2nd, right around there. May 1st, I know it was exactly whenever Pluto turned retrograde, but the other transit I'm more referring to is the Mercury cazimi. So I think that was actually the day after Pluto turned retrograde. So maybe it's the 2nd. The Mercury cazimi occurred at 11 degrees of Taurus. Honeys, Mercury is back at 11 degrees of Taurus. We are back at the point where the cazimi happened. We are recalling the clarity to the situation that occurred during that cazimi. We are recalling the things that have been triggered since Pluto went retrograde, because that all happened the same week. It was like Pluto went retrograde, Mercury cazimi, the whole rigmarole to the end of the week where we had the eclipse. And if you guys watched my eclipse video, I said for a lot of people that event, that whole week felt like a set of events that were just all roller coastering or teetering. They were just all connected to the eclipse. That whole week was. So if you actually listen to the eclipse video, or the week video of that eclipse, I actually gave examples of exactly like that, like 3 different sets of examples of the continued effect. That's not the right word. The chain effect, where everything just fed from one event to the next, to the next, to the next. This goes back to that. And I hate saying that. But this goes back to that time frame. The moon is in this opposition to Saturn, so we are talking to an elder. We are talking to an authority figure. We are the authority figure. We are that person. We're having new insight, new light shed in. We're getting somebody's egotistical input that we don't necessarily need. Maybe we ask Grandpa for advice, but Uncle is right here going, well, when I did that as a kid, I don't really care what you did as a kid, Uncle. That's not how this is going. You can see 2 different figures, 2 different elders. This is now going into that powwow tribal thing. You can see like the adults aren't on the same page. You can see 2 different perspectives very much being in the light here. And it can leave people really trying to figure out what to do. Like, this did not help. It was supposed to help, but it did not help. You can find yourself like overthinking the situation, over communicating the situation, trying to understand something. You can find yourself like explaining your side of the story, explaining the situation. You can also start to see like the other half of the lesson that was tied to that Mercury retrograde. You had a moment of clarity, cazimi at 11 degrees, a retrograde cazimi, but still a cazimi. You had a moment of clarity, but even that clarity still had a fogginess, still had something that we weren't completely on page with, that we weren't completely in line with. And it's going to take some time before we can fully understand, before we can fully put something into perspective. The thing about this quarter moon is we're looking at the mutable signs. So something is shifting, something is transitioning, something is taking a different shape. Mutable signs are the signs that transition us from season to season. Cardinal signs start the new season, but the bridge is the mutable energy. So think about how Pisces season can usually go for a lot of people. They can still have the elements of the dry, cold winter. Usually some of those elements tend to get a little bit more wet, so we can get a lot more snow at that very first part of Pisces season. But we also start to transition into showers versus snow and versus ice. We start to transition into spring, but the first day of spring is the first day of Aries season. We're transitioning. We are transitioning from the energies tied to the eclipse energy. We are transitioning from the events that occurred in that Mercury retrograde. We've been in the process of weaving certain things together, but whenever you weave a basket, after some point, you're going to get done weaving and you have to test it. And if you've ever weaved a basket before, you actually can see like they don't just let go of everything. They keep the long sticks as they're in the process of doing the weaving. And even a half weaved basket can still be used. You might have to catch something, catch some information. You might have to unload something. But there is a lot of mental energy. There can be some frustrations all throughout the day. You can find like two elders, the two parents, mom and dad aren't getting along. Uncle can't stand grandpa right now. Grandpa is sick of woke. If he hears woke one more time, I don't even know what woke means, but I'm tired of it. So, sorry, grandpa. Now, don't take it to heart. Don't take it too personally, and understand that there can be additional support in this energy because Mercury's still at 11 degrees. But what will happen is that Mercury is going to enter a trine to the moon, and the moon is in Virgo. The moon is in Mercury's sign. So part of the explanation, part of the information, part of the clarity, part of the understanding, the research, part of the result, part of the verdict, part of whatever this is, we can actually get the insight that we want from somebody that we weren't expecting it from somebody else. Now, this might not be the point of insight. This could actually be just going, well, I know what you said to Grandpa, and I know what Uncle said to you, but did you try asking Grandma? Did you try asking the female elders? Did we try asking Aunt Sandy? Did we try something else? Did you try that? Like, there can be just that little shift, that little push when I do that all the time. When Mercury hits the trine to the moon, like there can just be that a little additional insight, that little additional part. Now, Mercury again is the ruler of Gemini, and it is the ruler of Virgo. All during this time, the sun is still in a square to Saturn. So there could have been a brewing conversation all week that doesn't finally come to a point until this weekend. There can be, plans and trajectory and everything working us out to get to a certain destination. Now I'm going off powwow thing again. It might take all day for everyone to cool their jets. It might take all day for everybody to get to the point that they're yelling at each other. It kind of comes down to, again, where this is at in your personal chart and how this energy is hitting the other people involved. That's the thing, is you guys see the transits, but I can see whenever people are getting grabbed by the energy, even in their natal chart. I'm like, what is Mars touching in your chart right now? Like, I want to see I do that to people. They know it too. Like, don't look at my chart. I don't want to deal with this right now. I'm like, then don't talk to me about it. We get an outside source. We get an outside insight, and we get that additional support with Mercury. Mercury probably is going to be somebody else that just went through similar events or have done the similar thing in the past. And they're going to tell you, hey, when I was in that situation, I didn't talk to Grandpa because Grandpa doesn't like woke. I didn't talk to Uncle because Uncle does stupid stuff. I went to Auntie. I went to Grandma. I went to somebody else. Go talk to them. Oh, yeah. Now, for a lot of people, this is not going to be heavy. It's just going to be that bouncing around of like seeing this person, talking to this person, doing this thing, having this situation. And we're going to just do a lot of like social, because this is the mutable signs, and there can be a lot more movement with mutable signs. So there can be a lot of bouncing. But there can also be a lot of like critiquing and critical thinking and being critical of ourselves, being critical of the moment. The moon in Virgo tends to be very, very critical, but there will be insight. So I'm going to keep bumping this by hour. We're going to go into the 28th. We're going to go to Sunday. And we're going to get to the early morning. So right around, I guess it isn't early morning. I guess it's more afternoon. Sure, that works. So I'm roughly 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The moon is at 20 degrees of Virgo. It is bleh. I don't know what I was. It's entering a trine from Uranus, and it will go into a sextile with Venus. This can tie back to some of the adjustments and the exciting things that occurred a few days before. This could just be telling somebody about that new change, about this new thing, about this hopeful energy that we're getting consumed by because Jupiter in that North Node. We're going to be feeling it. We can have a sudden idea, a sudden inspiration, a sudden epiphany. If we applied for a job, then we could suddenly get that letter stating, yeah, we would like to interview you. We'll contact you at this time, or some level of like digital communication that's not necessarily expected with Uranus's energy. A lot of time Uranus can be very digital communication. And considering the age that we're in, that's completely normal. For some people, this is going to have to do with, talking about our feelings again, talking about where our hopes are, talking about our trajectory, talking about our dreams, talking about something, working through certain things. The sun is leaving its square from Saturn. So if we had words the night before, because Uncle said too many things, then the next morning when Uncle is sober, Denozo slap to the head. What are you thinking? I'm sorry. Go apologize to Grandpa. I don't care. Go apologize. There is some excitement. There is positive communication. There is helpful communication, helpful insight. This helpful insight is to this new area, this Venusian area. I mean it when I say, think of where we were a month ago during that Mercury retrograde, whenever Mars was in this place, Uranus was here, and the moon was going through Virgo. Things were in the wrong place. Things weren't right, and we were seeing that then. We're a month further. We're now at this ending part of May, and we're seeing things differently. And we're seeing the positive change, and we're seeing the fix. We're seeing the Band-Aids and all of the wounds that Mars stirred up, and Venus is going, here's your gold star bandage, and here's your dinosaur, and here's your lollipop. And she's fixing things. Even if she's not necessarily fixing exactly what got broken, she's now in the right place to allow for momentum to continue that wasn't there before, that wasn't seen before, that wasn't felt before, that wasn't understood before. I like this energy for a lot of people. And like I said at the beginning of this video, I like this week for a lot of people. And there is going to be a big part of the excitement and the new path and the new trajectory that starts to truly fill us, not F-E-E-L, but fill us with a lot of hope. We're going to start to be more hopeful. We're going to start to desire certain levels of support even more. Once they've presented themselves, some people, whenever you get like, you've had enough trauma, you can get that like that little nudge of, hey, I'm here for you. And you're like, what do you want? This time it doesn't quite feel like that. This time it feels like a lot of us needed that support. We needed that reflection. We needed that reconnection. We needed that other thing so we can finally start to take forward steps in the new direction. For us to finally have certain things fall into place. For us to finally feel like certain things are right again. Because literally, So much of the last half of 2022 with the Mars, Neptune, everything that didn't actually finally end until March of this year. And what else happened in March? Pluto went to Aquarius and Saturn went into Pisces. So we ended an area with a lot of confusion and a lot of misunderstandings and a lot of fogginess. And now it's like Venus is going through and fixing some of those things. But Mars is starting to blaze the path, and he's prepping for Venus. He's making space for Venus. He's getting a lot of help with Jupiter, and Jupiter's being hosted by Venus. So Mars might not even realize he's making way for Venus, but he is. He's clearing the path. He's clearing the pad. He's demoing the walls. He's doing that work so Venus can come do the upgrade and come do the facelift and come do everything that Venus is going to do in this area. Oh, Venus is going to have a very busy summer fixing all of Mars's messes. That's for sure. But like I said at the beginning of this video, it's going to be a good week. I don't get to say that very often. We've had so much heaviness and so much turnaround and roller coaster energy of just up and down and side to side and deception and having things that weren't clear before suddenly become very, very clear, and the eeriness to the clarity was undeniable. Like, you were this close to me and you were that person. No, we're not doing that. No. And we've had to make very big shifts. We've had very, very big changes. We've had to eliminate certain people because those people, those situations, that job, that car, those decisions were holding us back. That's why when Pluto turned retrograde, so many people were filled with fear as opposed to overcoming something, as opposed to transitioning, as opposed to taking back personal power. When we saw that area of deception, of lies, of things that wasn't clear, of things where somebody had not been honest with us, when we saw our boss in a new light and like, you know what? My integrity is not worth your ego. It's not. It's one of my famous lines, by the way. If you really know me, you know that line. My integrity is not worth your ego. If you got a problem with that, then you have a decision to make. If you have a problem with that, then I have a decision to make. Decisions were made. Space has been made. Decisions have been made. Transitions are occurring. This is the week of the first little shaky baby steps in the transition, in the new energy. Everything started to hit the new placements and hit the new areas going into this week. But these are the first few steps, those first few degrees of some of these planets in those new areas. So it's wonky, shaky, baby step-like energy. That's not a negative. Fall on your face. I fall on my face all the time. And whenever I fall on my face, I laugh. Not a lot of people can do that. My neighbors saw me fall one time and I did. I laughed my rear off. I will try to behave for YouTube. There is so much to this week that is meant to inspire. It is meant to help us with the lessons. It's meant to help us with our hopes and our dreams for the future. It is meant to help us feel the faded spiritual energies that are starting to fall into place, because there's such a faded energy to the North Node. Just as much as the North Node is consuming, because it's the head with no body and it's hungry all the time and it wants to consume certain areas, it can also be uplifting. And it really, again, comes down to where you're at in your own personal karma, how this is showing up in your chart, what Jupiter rules for you, and what Venus rules for you. These two planets are going to really be the stars of how the summer goes. And I'm not making a pun when I say stars. I know Venus and Jupiter show up for us as stars, but I mean, like, they're the headliners. They're going to headline the last half of this year. Venus is going to be the headliner for the whole last half of this year. Mars is done with his half of the stage time. Mars squares the nodes, his transition starts to change. Venus is getting closer to Leo, and Venus is going to be very empowered in Leo. Venus is going to do very, very well. And she's going to be making some very critical, uplifting changes for us in this area of the sky. So, I love and appreciate every single one of you. I hope everybody has a fantastic week, and I hope next week I get lots of comments that say exactly what went right this week, what fell into place, where the new support came in. I'm looking forward to hearing that from so many people. Whether you're in my DMs or you're in my comments, I don't really care about that part, but I am waiting to hear back from everybody about where things started to fall into place and how things started to go well this week. This week. Now, that one last devil's advocate thing, Mars-Jupiter is still a cutoff energy. And I didn't put a whole lot of emphasis on that, but there will be weight for some people, especially if there's health issues involved. There will be some weightedness to this energy. And I apologize to those people that have to go through that. But for others, for the majority of us, it's not going to be that. It's going to have new support. It's going to have new things fall in place. It's going to be that newer energy, that energy that we've been yearning for a long time. It's going to be a good week. 90% of us, it's going to be a good week. Take that and run with it. I'm so excited for this week. All right, my loves. I love and appreciate every single one of you. I do read the comments. I try to respond as best as I can. I am starting to take on readings again, so I will keep everybody in the loop whenever I open that a little bit more. Yeah, that's where we're at. I appreciate every single one of you. Subscribe.